Hi, and welcome to MBS Academy's Real Lives. And today we're talking to Ruben Jay, who is the voice of radio. He is a red carpet voice and has appeared on many well-known shows such as The Voice, X Factor, and I can see all the wrestling badges in the background there. So, how are you today, Ruben?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you for coming on board. Today, you're going to be talking about your story of your childhood, your early beginnings.
Yes, I'm super excited. It's a story I haven't really said, I haven't really told too much of. So you'll be one of the first to hear it.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. As you know, we do these stories because I think it's really quite important to share stories and experiences. It helps people to understand their own lives, and maybe you'll help somebody to face perhaps a difficulty in their life or to understand what's going on in their life a bit better. So tell me where it begins.
Oh man, it begins in Orange County, California, all the way across the world from you. It seems like
absolutely.
You are you're in France, I believe, correct?
Yeah, I'm in the south of France. Yes.
South France, and I'm all the way over here in California, Hollywood. I was born in 1992 to a woman named Angela, who we'll dive into her story probably a little bit more in a little bit. But long story short, for that, was born and raised out here. I've lived in the same house for 25 years.
It's amazing.
It's a rarity these days. It feels like that people live in the same house for so long.
That's true, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I certainly never have.
Yeah, I have a friend who, excuse me, he actually was on my podcast, and he was telling me he's moved, I think, 8 times in 20 years. And I'm like, that is an incredible amount of time to be moving around.
I can beat that.
Oh, really?
I moved around 13 times in 10.
Wow. That's insane. Do you just leave things like packed? Because I don't know how you would.
Actually, there's a certain amount of truth to that. There's always boxes in the garage that remain unpacked. That is true. But it's very therapeutic to have a clear out when you move.
Yeah.
That's my excuse anyway.
It makes some sense, because I think about like the clarity of like cleaning out your desk at the end of, a certain project or something. Your mind just like completely clears out. I can only imagine what it's like to completely clear out your living area and starting fresh.
Yes. But then I also admire, and there is part of me that sort of would like to be in the same house that I grew up in, to have those roots. That's quite nice.
Yeah, for me, I've been very lucky to it's been a cursing and a blessing at the same time to be in the same place for so long. The blessing obviously being low rent, manageable, being able to stay with friends and family who you've grown up with.
Yeah.
And then obviously when the pandemic hit and losing literally everything that I had, it was actually really good to be able to say, okay, at least I still have my childhood home. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't have to worry about, if I'm going to be able to find food on the table because I was, my dad's still around and still kicking. Yeah. We were able to survive our portion of the lockdown so far. So, but the negative of that is not being able to see different parts of the area or not getting to know different cultures or different parts of the country or the state as often, not being able to say, oh yeah, I've moved to, it's interesting to hear people's stories about moving all over the world and all over, even if it's just moving across the city, it's pretty interesting to hear.
Yes. You said a moment ago you lost everything in the pandemic.
Yeah, in February, I was working 3 jobs, essentially full time, doing marketing for one company, working over at a radio station here in Orange County, and teaching at the Academy of Radio and TV Broadcasting out here in Orange County, California. And when the pandemic hit, I was literally let go from each job. Literally one day after the next, each job called and said, "Hey, by the way, we're letting you go." So,
that's awful.
yeah, it was rough. It was rough, and it was a really rough March, April, May, and then June things turned around again once things opened up. Was able to get back, working a normal job now. But
a normal job.
yeah, not in the broadcasting or marketing world, but one with benefits and retirement plan and actually pays the bills. So
has that been a positive step forward?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've been in this industry now for 10 years, and being able to I don't know how to explain it in a way that would make sense to everybody out there, but radio is really a dying industry here in the United States. I don't know what it's like across the world, but out here it's really an industry that traditional talking to a microphone over the local FM transmitted signal it is an industry that doesn't really exist anymore. And for those who still work in that industry, you're making $12, $13 an hour, which, part-time with no benefits, no insurance, no retirement, and no guarantee of a job tomorrow, unless you're the big names.
Yeah.
So I did that for 10 years. I struggled for 10 years, and, and I made a lot of money in the process. All the money I made in the process was done independently, not through a big company, not through a partnership with, a broadcast company. It was all stuff that I created on my own. And I've lost a lot of money in the process. And with this job, this new job I work in, I'm not gonna say where I work in particular, but I work in what they call an essential industry now. I don't have to worry about showing up to work tomorrow and then being like, "Hey, by the way, the pandemic's back," or everyone's being on lockdown, so you're losing your job again. They worked through the lockdowns, they worked through the pandemic. I don't have to worry about if my one of the jobs I had a couple of weeks before the lockdowns hit, they're like, "Hey, by the way, we're having issues making payroll, so we can't pay you your full wage. So here's half your check. By the way, don't cash that till Friday." And then you're like, "Dude, you're already 3 days late."
Yes.
It's one of those things where professionally, it's one step backwards and like going to a normal 9-to-5 job. But personally and long-term wise, it's like 20 steps forward.
Yes, I can see that. That's really interesting story in itself, because it's very different from the experiences here in France, for sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, because I'm just curious from a strictly political standpoint. We don't have to get into the politics of it, but what is the government doing? What is the government doing for people out there who are maybe not working right now or don't have really a solid income during the pandemic?
They are providing support.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it came through quite rapidly. There hasn't been huge job losses. So it was 3 months of support.
That's good.
And so when lockdown ended, it all virtually went back to normal.
That's awesome.
From a work point of view. Obviously, there's social changes. When lockdown first happened, it felt pretty hard because we had to produce a piece of paper before we could even walk out our front door. If we wanted to go shopping, we had to have paper, we had to have identity to explain why we were going. But with hindsight, it was actually a good thing, because it made you think about going out. A sort of, oh, I need a pint of milk. Now I can't be bothered to sit there, fill out a form, and the risk of getting stopped on the roundabout to produce your papers. So you really did organise your lives to do the least amount of going out, and I think it worked in the long term. We're very low rates of COVID here. That's good. Life is almost back to normal.
That's good. Yeah, it's interesting out here because I feel like a lot of us used going to the store as an excuse to get out of the house.
Yes.
As opposed to, taking our, so we would, we'd run out of milk, like you said, you know, and you would think the rational thing would be like, okay, well, there's a pandemic going on, so how about you wait till you're out of milk, cheese, and eggs,
Absolutely.
before you leave the house. But you're like, oh man, I have half a gallon of milk. I have to go buy more milk.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
You go spend 2 minutes at the Walmart.
But yeah, no, it did actually make you think about exactly that. You would go. It would then become a challenge to sort of go 2 weeks without actually leaving the house, and you'd see on Facebook people say, it's 116 days and I haven't left the house yet. But no, I think long term it's actually has been a successful way of doing things.
That's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So getting back to your story, because we've digressed totally, which I think is great. But yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you? I mean, where did you want to dive in?
You, because on your little bio that you sent me, you were fostered at a very young age.
Yes.
At 6 weeks. Yeah.
So let me tell the story of Angela, who is the biological mother. She has an interesting story of her own, and I've heard this secondhand. So the information that I'm given may not be 110% true, but I'm positive that it's
still your story.
Yeah, exactly. It's my story. How weird it is, but Angela was born in Texas, and she was actually born to a mother and grandmother who ran a prostitution ring out in Texas, and she was ultimately prostituted at the age of like 11 and 12 in this prostitution ring, which is super sad, and it's weird to think that something that was going on 20 years ago with essentially sex trafficking and children sex trafficking is still a hot topic today. It's really weird that you would think that at some point that would pan down and there would be some steps taken to really pull that back, but I digress. At the age of 12 or 13, she was impregnated by one of the Johns who visited her and took her for companionship, and that guy took her from Texas and brought her to California, and she had her first of many children. We don't know how many children she ended up ultimately having. I came, I believe, fourth in line to a different, and each person that was born to a different father. So
how old was she when she had you, if you were the fourth? Do you know?
I don't know the exact age, but I believe that she was 15 and a half when she had my brother, who's 2 years older than me. So I believe she was somewhere between the age of 17 and 19. And you got to think too, she started having kids at the age of 13. And by the time she had me, she still had a good 10, 15 years, if not 20 years of having children still. So we don't know how many potentially more came after me. We know that there were at least 2 or 3 after me. But there could be, the way the body works, could literally be 10 or 20 more.
Yes.
Which is a scary thought, to think that there's potentially that many of me running around, or people with my blood running around. And so to fast forward a little bit, she had 2 boys that are my older brothers, obviously, and she was on drugs, wasn't able to provide a home for them.
Yes.
And somehow or another got caught living under a bridge with the 2 kids, and they were taken away. And as the foster parent of those 2 started the adoption process for them, I was born. And the adoption process out here in the United States takes about 1.5 years to 2 years, especially and if you're going through the foster system, it could take longer than that, because the parent has the right to be reunified with their children. And so depending on the judge and depending on the county and depending on the case, you could theoretically be in the foster system for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years before your case is even approved for adoption.
Right.
And so this lady named Paula started the adoption process on my two brothers. I was born, and believe it or not, I committed my first crime at the age of 6 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Your first? Is there another story there?
I mean, a couple speeding tickets here and there, but I committed a crime at the age of 6 weeks. I was an accomplice to armed robbery.
Oh, wow.
This is 100% a true story. My biological mother, Angela, was the getaway driver of an armed robbery, and I was in the back seat. And yeah, which explains the speeding tickets later on in my life. So when she was caught, I was taken away from her. I spent don't know how long I spent in what is called it's called Orangewood out here. It's like a halfway home, I guess, for kids. I don't know how long I spent in there, and then I was ultimately placed in the care of Paula with my two older brothers.
That's really nice, though, that you were fostered with your brothers. You could easily have been separated. At least you've got some, sibling ties.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I can explain this later too, but I always tell people that I'm the youngest of three, but and you would think that I'd have youngest sibling syndrome, but I actually have only child syndrome.
Okay.
Because I grew up so differently and so isolated from them that it just didn't really matter to me, how many siblings I had.
Right.
So, but I think it's important for me to state this as well, and this is part of the beauty of working out the story is I can actually work out the details on how I tell it too. Paula wasn't a young, 30-year-old woman who decided to take in some foster kids. She was a 55-year-old woman who had raised 6 kids of her own already.
Okay.
So she wasn't, somebody who wanted to have kids and couldn't, or she wasn't somebody who, was just looking to give back. She had her kids. She literally raised 6 of her own, who, by the way, were, I believe the age difference between my older brother and her youngest son, I believe is like 35 years.
Okay. Yeah. So it's more like grandchildren sort of being brought up by a grandmother rather than a mother figure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she was our mother, 100%.
Yeah.
She didn't treat us any differently. But growing up, I mean, we would walk into parent-teacher conferences and get immediately the teachers would be like, "Oh, it's so nice you brought your grandmother." No, that's my mom.
Yes. So what's the age difference between you and your brothers?
We're all a year and I think we're all a year apart.
Yeah, quite close.
Yeah, very close.
Age-wise.
Like one right after another. My oldest brother David, just turned 30 a couple days ago. My older brother Alex, I believe, turned 29. Yeah, he turned 29, and then I'm turning 28 in December. So,
okay,
we're all one right after another.
Yeah, considering the close age group, it would seem a little odd that you said you felt like an only child, that you had only child syndrome.
Yeah, so much like Paula, the person who ended up adopting us, David, was my dad. He was also, a little bit younger than her, not by much. I think like 6 years younger.
Right.
So he was older and couldn't handle the 3 boys by himself. So what ended up happening was a lot of times whenever my mom needed to go to the store, go to the salon, go run an errand, whatever, she would take me, because it was easier to take me than it was to take the 2 other boys.
Right.
So I got really close to my mom. Like I became a mama's boy, like easily within minutes,
Yes.
But yeah, because of that, I didn't, my brothers and I didn't really get along all that well either. normal brother stuff, teasing.
Yeah.
But I was much more sensitive to that than most other kids, I guess. And just for whatever reason, just didn't make sense for us to be hanging out too much. And, they were into baseball and football and, playing outside, and I was into computers and watching wrestling. As you can tell, the wrestling belts behind me. And so it was two different worlds, and in reality, we'd end up fighting more than we'd end up getting along. Even to this day, we still we get along a lot better now than we did before. But probably every eighth or ninth interaction, we start fighting.
Yes, but I think that's pretty normal sibling stuff. Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of people who would say the same. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So obviously, your story. Were you just told about your biological mother, or did you investigate the story yourself?
Yeah. So I had grown up believing that the people I grew up with who were raising me were my parents.
Yes.
So when I was like 9 or 10 years old, my older brother actually got in an argument with me, got in a fight with me, and told me, "Oh, by the way, you're adopted."
Okay.
Well, it turns out so was he.
Yes.
And he apparently he knew that, but I didn't know that at the time. And so my mom had explained to me what adoption meant and kind of talked me through how I was born to a woman who, at first when she started having kids, wasn't having kids because she wanted kids. She was having kids because she kept getting pregnant by dudes who were using her for her body. And then once she had the kids, did stupid things and got the kids taken away.
Well, yes. Armed robbery being probably pretty high on the list of stupid things with
Absolutely.
a 6-week-old baby.
Absolutely. And living under a bridge with children isn't the safest either. And, I mean, but again, she was a child herself,
Absolutely. She's got her own story, hasn't she? I mean, that's a pretty tragic story.
Yeah. And
to be so young.
Yeah, and my understanding is she hasn't changed much since all this happened anyway, either.
Right. So, okay.
So she's still, still a child in some degree. And I learned later on in life, as the older I got, the more and more my mom would tell me. And so I learned later on that there was a chance, there was a minute where Angela was clean. She wasn't on drugs anymore. She had found a job. She had found housing that she had been in for 6 or 7 months. And by all intents and purposes, she had gotten her life together. So this is before the adoption process with me began. So what happened was my 2 brothers were in the middle of the adoption process. When I was put into foster care, the county stopped the adoption process in case I was put up for adoption and they wanted to keep the boys together. And so Paula and David, my parents, they agreed to stop the whole process and waited the 1.5 years for me to go through the foster system, essentially.
Yes.
Which included Angela being given the chance for rehab and parental classes and career counseling and just being given the resources that she was due to her for the situation that she was in, knowing that if she completed all this, the judge at the end of it could put me back in her care.
Yeah.
And the 2 other boys would not happen with them. They were already being adopted out. While the process stopped for them, it cannot be undone.
Right.
So my mom got the call one day. Hey, she's been clean for 1 year. She's been living in the same place for the better part of 1 year. She has a job. We believe that she can support the baby. Get his stuff packed, and sometime in the next week, we're going to come pick him up. And
that must have been pretty tough as well for your mum.
She when she was telling me the story, I was probably about 15 or 16 when she told me the story. She teared up.
Yeah,
and she told me, she's like, listen, she's like, even though you weren't my child, I raised you. She's like,
Yes.
I taught you how to eat, and I taught you how to go to the bathroom, and I taught you how to come down the stairs. And she's like, so you were my baby, you know, even if
Yes.
you weren't my child. And so, you know, and unfortunately that's the pain and reality of fostering children. If you get them out of infancy, you develop
Bonds
and attachments. My dad would tell me, and to this day he'll tell me, oh yeah, I didn't hold you when you were a baby.
Okay.
I'm like, why is that? He's like, because I didn't want to be attached to you when they took you away.
Right.
You know? And so that, and honestly, to this day, there's a little bit of a strain between him, not like an envy or like a, why didn't you love me when I was a baby? Just there isn't that attachment there.
Yes.
Where with my mom, there was an attachment, and there was a very noticeable difference between the way that my mom and I interacted and the way my dad and I interacted. So anyway, so she was told, hey, by the way, we're taking the baby. We'll let you know when. About 4 days later, she gets a call again and says, well, Paula, how would you feel about adopting the baby?
4 days.
So my mom cusses them out and says, you can't play with my emotions this way. You can't call me one day and tell me that you're taking the baby and then call me back the next and, you know, a couple days later and tell me that, or ask me if I want to keep the baby. Like that's not fair to me. That's not fair to the baby. That's not fair to Angela. Like you guys have to make a decision. And so the story goes that, you know, after they calmed her down, they explained to her what had happened. And what had happened was, Angela was told, hey, you have to come in for a final drug test. Because we want to make sure that you know that you're still clean, and if you are, you're getting the baby back. And she tested positive. And you know, part of me thinks to myself, you know, there's like multiple thoughts that goes through my head when I tell this story, and one is, you know, did you not love me? You know, like
yes,
to Angela, like was I your least favorite of the children that you weren't willing to put the fight up for me? Like you kicked and screamed for the other two, but you didn't, like the chance you had for me, you gave it up.
Yes.
The other part of me is thank God that you know that you relapsed, because my life was changed indefinitely for the better.
Absolutely.
You know, and the thought that I actually give the benefit of the doubt to for this woman is that she woke up one morning and realized, I can't do this, and sabotaged herself and actually sacrificed, you know, her motherly instincts to make sure that I was taken care of in the long term. And that's the story that I cling to.
that is an excellent way of looking at it. Extremely positive. And I think that sentence alone will help people that are listening to this to be able to put a different spin on maybe their own story, because you could definitely, and you probably have gone down, as you say, the self-worth part of that. But yes, and I think you're probably right. I think she probably did have a realization that she couldn't actually cope and provide the life for you.
Yeah, you know, that's the story that I choose to, like I said, cling to, because the other two options, realistically, one doesn't give credit to anybody, you know, for what happened, and the other one gives negativity that I just don't want in my life, you know, because when it comes down to it, you know, I could sit here and I could tell you, you know, I can call Angela every word in the book. And I have at times, not so much out of anger, but just out of like, I don't need this person in my life. But I don't want to be carrying that negativity. I don't want to be carrying that baggage. So I choose to think that, in a sense, I kind of martyred her in a sense where, you know, she gave up, you know, her wants and desires for the betterment of a child. And while I'm not sure if that's true or not, that's what I'm going to stick to. That's the side of the story I'm going to tell my children if I ever have any.
Absolutely. And I think you should stick to that. 100% should stick to that for sure, because you've got a life.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be a positive, fulfilled one. It's otherwise you could be going, I'm half this person, and what does that make me?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's huge value in that positivity. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of people who have gone through either foster care or adoption, or a parent walking out on them, or a step parent walking out on them, they tend to think about what they did wrong as a child.
Yes.
And 99.999% of the times it wasn't that person. It wasn't you who did it, like in that 0.001% of the times that it is that person's fault. It's because you were born, and the person who had you, or the person whose responsibility it was to take care of you, didn't know what to do, or got scared, or just wasn't ready for the responsibility. And again, it's nothing that you did. It's their decision.
Yes.
You just happen to be the product that, and unfortunately happen to be the pawn in the game that ends up ultimately paying the price, or potentially becoming a phenomenon of somebody who's given a second chance. Or I have a friend of mine who I won't mention his name, but if he watches this or listens to this, he'll know exactly who it is, whose father left at a young age and left him and his sister to kind of fend for themselves with his mom. And he's an incredible, he turned into an incredible man. And I can't wait until the day that he has children and a wife, because he's going to show everybody that just because he didn't have a father around, that doesn't mean that he can't be a good father, and he can't be a good husband. Just because he doesn't know how to, hang drywall because his dad didn't teach him, doesn't mean that he won't make a good father or husband someday.
Absolutely. And that is about, again, the positivity and making your experiences into making you a stronger person.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer of learning lessons from every negativity.
Yes.
And you know what? Going through the foster care system isn't a negativity. It's an unfortunate side of life for a lot of people, that there are people in this world who have children who are either not ready for them, or just do something stupid to get their kids taken away. But just because you went through foster care or adoption doesn't mean that you're lesser of a person.
Absolutely not. And everybody is unique, and everybody has their own path in life. And the foster system is there to improve life for children. As you say, it's about your biological mother recognized that she couldn't care for you and ensured that you were brought up in a loving adopted family.
Absolutely. And just because you're taken out of a bad situation and put into an unknown situation doesn't mean that you're destined for failure or negativity or anything. If anything, it's really giving you the chance that somebody who was making bad decisions for you would have been able to give you. Angela would have never been able to give me a stable home that I've lived in for 25 years.
Yes, exactly.
I never once as a child went to bed hungry, thank God.
Yes.
I never woke up in the morning wondering if I was going to have clothes to wear to school, or if my lunch money was going to be in my backpack. Thank God.
Yes.
I was extremely blessed.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I didn't struggle, and that doesn't mean I didn't go through, the same things everyone else does, but I got really lucky. Being a foster kid who got adopted into a Mexican family, you know, like statistically, you know, middle class Mexican families don't really exist all that much. You know, it's really difficult for you know, Hispanic families in the United States. For so the stats say,
Yes.
you know, more times than not, you know, Hispanics and minorities struggle in the United States. And I was blessed that I didn't feel the struggle until much later in my teens, after my parents had to spend thousands of dollars, you know, on personal issues, and the economy tanked. But I was able to, you know, again, I was practically an adult at that point. So at that point, you can fend for yourself a little bit, you know, but as a kid, I'd never had to worry about that. So thank God it was best case scenario for my life.
Yeah. Have you ever, you obviously know Angela's story. Have you ever met her? Have you ever had a desire to meet her?
No, I actually, I purposely avoid her.
Okay. So you know that she's around, you know where she is, because obviously you have a very current story about her.
Yeah, I don't know where she is, you know, like at this moment.
Yeah.
I know where she hangs out. I know that she is still kind of involved with people that she shouldn't be. I know that she never really got out of the problems that she was in. But I've had a couple of, you know, so you know, the thing that there's two kind of things that happen there. Number one, I was so close to Paula, who was, again, my adopted mom, that I didn't need Angela.
Yes.
You know? Like there's some kids who, when they find out they're adopted, have this void they need to fill. And more times than not, in my experience, it ends up just disappointing them even more. But for me, I had such a loving mother that I did not need validation from some other woman. I did not need, and not only that, but I also had church family and different people in my life who, if for whatever reason Paula wasn't able to meet this certain need because of her age or her health, I had 4 or 5 other families that would step up and provide me that.
So you had a good support system.
Absolutely.
The other side of that is also Paula may well feel hurt.
Yeah.
If you seek out Angela, your biological mother.
Yeah, my oldest brother actually did seek her out and actually did kind of have a revolt after a while.
Okay.
And, you know, he went through this phase where, I don't know, I personally, I've never talked to him about it. But I think he believed that grass was greener on the other side. And he had, you know, he says that he had memories of playing with her and visitations and stuff. And so he had a connection. I don't remember, you know, that
you were 6 weeks old.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she stopped rolling, you know, she stopped visiting once the adoption process for me started. So I was at the oldest 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
So my earliest memory is playing with my dad, not playing with Angela. So
yes.
So for me, yeah, exactly. So for me, it's not. I don't have a connection to her whatsoever. He did. He had a big backlash. He for whatever reason, had a disdain for Paula that he to this day hasn't completely been able to completely reconcile. I was extremely close to Paula. You know, if anyone, you know, she was my mom, you know.
Yes.
That's a thing in like Hispanic culture, particularly. I don't know if it's anywhere else, but usually, like in American families, they say, "Oh, mom, you know, mom's going to do this." But in typical Hispanic families, you know, every child says, "Oh, my mom's going to do this," even if it's to your sibling. But she was my mom, you know, and so I never once seeked her out, never once wanted to be a part of anything she had to offer. But then on the other side of that too, she never made the effort to get involved in my life. I went 23 years before I ever heard anything from her.
Okay.
I never got a birthday card, never got a Valentine's Day card, never got a Christmas card, never got a Christmas present, never got a birthday present. And again, I've lived in the same house for 25 years. Like, you know, where I live. You visited us there at one point. There was no excuse. So,
yes.
but on my 23rd birthday, I did get a birthday card from her. And
Okay.
my mom handed it to me, and she said, "Oh, it's from, you know," she said, "Oh, it's from your mom," you know.
And that must have instantly put confusion in your head, because your mum is giving you a card from your mum.
Yeah. So, you know, my initial thought was, you're giving me like, what? Okay, cool. Like a birthday card. Then I saw the name on the card, and I just threw it in the trash. I didn't even open it. You know,
right.
I had no desire to seek that out. And I saw the way that when my brother did end up connecting with Angela, and he brought her over to the house at one point, I saw the hurt in my mom's eyes.
Yes.
And I committed to myself to never be the person to do that. My mom and I can argue, we could fight, we could have disagreements, you know, we could have money problem, whatever that is. But I never wanted to be the person that hurt, you know, hurt her in a way that she questioned her motherhood and her raising 9 children that she rose, you know, essentially from up, plus having a daycare, plus also having 5 kids for 15
dedicated
years.
mother.
And so for me, it was, you know, I never wanted to be that person. So I never seeked her out. And actually, she sent a follow-up letter a couple months later, after my 23rd birthday. And that I did open, because I figured if she's taking the time to write a letter, she might have something she wants to say. Let me turn that off real quick.
No, it's an inspiring story, and it's a very positive story, you know, from very dire beginnings, really. From a tragic story, you have become a strong person, very stable person with a loving family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I credit that 110% to Paula. I was so close to her that, you know, she, at a very young age, you know, I was 16 or 17, or probably even younger than that, when we were struggling financially, you know, and she would let me know, hey, we're struggling. You know, we went to the store one day, and she bought like a 20-pound bag of rice and a 20-pound bag of beans, and said, you know, if things get really bad, at least we have beans and rice.
Yes.
You know, and I looked at her kind of like weird, because, you know, not growing up rich, but not growing up poor, just kind of one of those things where, like, we never had to worry about where the food was coming from. It was a weird statement to hear. And she looked at me and she said, we're not doing well. You know, I was like, all right. But I saw her battle through that. You know, I saw her, you know, she lost her oldest son in 2006. And, you know, it nearly killed her. But she fought through it, and she's
obviously a very incredible, strong person herself.
Yeah. You know, and it's one of those things where you know, you never want to see somebody go through pain, but I'm thankful I did. And I'm thankful I did at a young age, because, you know, when my oldest brother died, the next morning, you know, she woke up and she said, all right, you guys are going to school. You know,
yes,
where
life goes on.
Yeah, well, but most families will keep their kids home for a day or two. You know, but for her, she's like, nope, everything's back to normal. You know, just because we're mourning. I think we lost one day of school throughout that whole process, and that was just because one of the services was early in the morning as opposed to an evening.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I 110% give her credit for the strength. And I give her credit for the sensitivity that I have as well. You know, she literally taught me and turned me into the person I am today.
Yes. And did a good job. And she obviously was a very hard worker.
Yeah. I mean, I never, you know, never once didn't see her, you know, not working when she was able to. So,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, and even then, even as she turned, you know, into her 70s and, you know, late 70s, she would say, I wish I can go get a secretary job somewhere. I wish I can go answer phones somewhere just so she can have a job, you know? And she's like, I don't have the energy to do it anymore. And I'm like, it's fine. It's our job for you now. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
It's an excellent story, and thank you so much for sharing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you giving me the platform to do so too.
Just to end, tell me a little bit about your current podcasts, and you also educate other podcast users.
Yeah, absolutely.
So producers would be a better word than users.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was employed by the Academy of Radio and TV Broadcasting for the last 5 years, where I train people how to get into both radio, TV, and also towards the end there help people launch some podcasts. So if you are looking to start a podcast, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is therubenjay, that's TheRubenjay @gmail.com. I'd be glad to help consult you through that process. My current podcast is called You're My Best Friend. It's a podcast about life, friendship, and tacos.
Definitely about tacos.
Yes. It's Taco Tuesday for me out here today. And well, actually, it's the end of Taco Tuesday, but I did have some good tacos. And basically what we do is we bring on people who have interesting stories or are musicians or entertainers or authors or whatever. We bring them on the podcast and we let them tell their story, how they got started, while asking them some essential questions that we have while we say that we do life with people. We talk about our friendships and we eat tacos together. So
excellent.
That's kind of the one, you know, the one sheeter there. You can head over to lifefriendshiptacos.com for more information on that, or head over to linktr.ee/bestfriendpodcast to find us on all platforms. We're all over the place. We'd love to have you listen.
Excellent. And all those contact details will be available underneath this video, so they'll be easy to find. Thank you so much for talking to me. I've really enjoyed it, and it's such an inspiring story, and I truly hope that it's inspired and helped others to be as strong as you are.
Absolutely. I hope so too. And if anybody, like, just honestly, if anybody's going through something, or if this helps you through anything, please let me know.
Yes.
If I can do anything for you, I will do my best to make it happen, make it a reality.
Absolutely.
Because we all, to use an overused phrase for 2020, we're all in this together.
And it's true. And it's true. Yeah. And technology makes the world a smaller place.
Absolutely. I agree.
I wouldn't be talking to you now if it wasn't for the internet.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time.
And I wish to thank everybody who's listened and watched this, and hopefully they will subscribe for more, because there will be others.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.